Your story, our station.
If you've ever felt trapped in that endless top 40 loop, you know the feeling. Same songs, same sounds, same safe choices. Like the world hit repeat and lost the button to try something new. Today, I want to introduce you to a crew that's built to do the exact opposite. Change the station entirely. Bullet End Flight is based right in the heart of the 505, Albuquerque, where the green chili runs hot and the creative energy somehow runs even hotter. And when I say Bullet End Flight, I'm not talking about one single project or one single vibe. Think of it more like a parent company to a whole family of artistic misfits. People who don't fit neatly into the usual boxes, and honestly, don't want to. At the center of everything is a mission that's pretty simple to say, but not always easy to pull off. Elevate the voices that usually get talked over. The artists who get labeled too niche, or too different, or that weird one, too Albuquerque. Whatever that's supposed to mean. If you've ever heard something like that about your work, this is your invitation to pull up a chair. Because that's not a deal breaker here. That's the whole point. Bullet End Flight is built around inclusivity, creative community building, and giving underrepresented artists the megaphone they deserve. Not as a trend, not as a marketing angle, but as the core identity. It's a response to a creative world that can feel gated, filtered, and overly polished, where the most interesting voices get told to tone it down so they can be easier to sell. And here's where it gets fun. Bullet End Flight doesn't believe in staying in one lane. Because why would you? Why drive a sedan when you could take a spaceship? The whole approach is more like, what does human expression look like across every format? And then going after all of it. Let's start with music, because that's a major part of the DNA. The mindset here isn't pick a genre and stay in it. It's more like, what's the vibe and does it hit? That can mean the spiritual charge of gospel, the late-night pulse of house music, the smooth storytelling and emotion of R&B, or even that classic country charm where life falls apart but somehow the drink is still cold. It's not about fitting into a category. It's about making something that feels alive. But it doesn't stop at music. There's a strong dedication to the spoken word too. Podcasts that get into the real stuff, not just surface-level chatter, and poetry that doesn't play nice. The kind that lands heavy, the kind that says what people avoid saying, the kind that reminds you words can still be dangerous in the best way. Then there's film and TV writing. Getting into scripts that actually have a heartbeat. Not another recycled reboot of a reboot. Not something designed by committee to offend the fewest people possible. The focus is on stories with soul. Stories with perspective. Stories that sound like they came from real lives, in real places, with real edges. And of course, the stage. Because there is nothing like live performance. It's unpredictable, it's electric, and yeah, anything can happen. And usually does. The stage is where art stops being an idea and becomes a moment, right in front of people who can feel it in real time. So why would an artist want to plug into something like this? Because being a starving artist has been romanticized for way too long, and it doesn't need to be the default. And being a lonely artist, trying to build everything by yourself, with no village, no network, no support, That's even worse. Bullet and Flight is about building that village on purpose. The goal is to take the talent that's been brewing in the Southwest, often overlooked, often underestimated, and project it outward. Not in a please notice us kind of way, but in a we're already here, and we're bringing the whole sound with us kind of way. Bullet and Flight positions itself as a launch pad, a safety net, and the hype you didn't realize you were missing. And let's be honest, a lot of people are tired of gatekeepers. Tired of needing permission. Tired of feeling like they have to sand down everything interesting about their work to be taken seriously. If that's you, this is a space that's built for finding your tribe. People who want loud, weird, real art, and who aren't afraid to make it together. If you want to get in the mix, Deonbase is https://just-dominic. And if you want the visuals, you can find the YouTube channel at Just Dominic Music. Bullet and Flight Music, LLC is the company behind it all. And the invitation is open. Check out what's being built, listen to what's coming out, and if you're ready to change the station, this is a good place to start.
Well, the times they are a-changing fast. Some old truths just built to last. We're the Christ following network on Bullet and Flight Radio. Yeah, the Christ following network on Bullet and Flight Radio. Christ following network on Bullet and Flight Radio.
Hello, and welcome back to Bullet and Flight Radio. Your story, our station. If you know somebody who's been carrying spiritual pain in silence, share this episode with them. Seriously, today's conversation is urgent and it's also tender. We're talking about religious trauma syndrome, often shortened to RTS. So yeah, grab a drink, settle in. This is one of those episodes you'll want to sit with.
And before anyone tunes out because they hear the word religious, let's say it up front. This isn't an attack on faith. This is about harm. About what happens when religion becomes controlling, fear-driven, and emotionally unsafe.
Exactly. And for a lot of people, even hearing us name, it is a relief. Because they've felt the symptoms, they've lived the confusion, but they didn't have language for it. Deconstructing harmful beliefs and unlearning ingrained habits is a process. It's not just a mental shift, it's emotional, social, even physical. And it takes time, patience, a lot of honesty, and intentional action.
Let's define terms. When people say religious trauma syndrome, what do they mean? Is it a formal diagnosis?
Great question. RTS as a term started gaining traction around 2011, introduced by American psychologist Marlene Winell. But here's the tricky part. It's not currently listed as an official diagnosis in the DSM, and it doesn't have a specific ICD code either.
So some people hear that and go, oh, then it's not real.
Right, and that reaction is common. But in real clinical life, many people experiencing RTS get diagnosed with related trauma conditions, like PTSD or complex PTSD. Therapists started using RTS because it describes something very specific. Trauma that's shaped directly by authoritarian religion, spiritual abuse, and fear-based belief systems.
And we've seen that in other parts of medicine, too. Like, there are frameworks that clinicians use even when a neat code doesn't exist. People still need care.
Exactly. The absence of a code doesn't erase the suffering. And RTS highlights a side of religion people don't always want to talk about. We hear plenty about religion as comfort, community, and meaning. But there's also the other side of the coin: indoctrination, coercion, control, and shame.
So what kinds of religious settings are we talking about? Because not every religious community functions the same way.
True. RTS is often linked to authoritarian or high-control environments that can show up in a rigid denomination, a cult-like offshoot, or even a mainstream group where leadership is unaccountable and members are conditioned to obey without question. In those systems, there's often pressure to follow a narrow, approved spiritual path, and to give leaders access to your private life.
And sometimes it goes beyond private life. People are pressured into handing over money, relationships, even their career choices, right?
Yes, your finances, your social network, your identity. In some communities, you're expected to disclose secrets, confess constantly, and accept intrusive oversight. And one major tool used in these systems is victim blaming.
Say more on that, because that part is insidious.
Victim blaming shifts responsibility onto the follower. If something goes wrong, it's not because the system is unhealthy. It's because you didn't pray hard enough, you lacked faith, you sinned, you rebelled, you opened a door. And that keeps people trapped because they keep trying to fix themselves instead of naming the harm.
And it's also a powerful mind control strategy. If the system can convince you that your suffering is always your fault, you'll never challenge the authority that's causing it.
That's it. Now, clinically, RTS can show up across multiple areas of life. Let's break it down so listeners can recognize what they might be carrying.
Let's do symptoms. What does RTS look like day to day?
Cognitively, many people struggle with critical thinking and decision making. It's like your mind was trained to outsource discernment. You second guess everything. You might feel foggy, confused, or unsure who you are outside the role you were taught to play.
A lot of identity confusion.
Yes. Emotionally, people can experience intense guilt and shame, anxiety, panic, depression, grief, anger, loneliness. Some have suicidal thoughts. And triggers can be surprisingly specific. A worship song in a store, a certain phrase, a church building, even the smell of incense.
And I think people underestimate the body side of it. Trauma doesn't stay in the head.
Absolutely. Functionally, you can see sleep problems, nightmares, changes in appetite, eating issues, physical symptoms that don't have an obvious medical cause. Sexual dysfunction is also common, especially if someone grew up in purity culture or a system that used sex and the body as a constant shame target.
And socially, leaving those environments can feel like stepping onto another planet.
That fish out of water feeling is real. People can feel disconnected from mainstream culture, isolated, behind on social skills, unsure how to build relationships. And leaving can cost you your entire community. Family ties, friendships, even your job if your work was connected to the group.
So RTS isn't just about what happened while you were inside. It's also about what happens when you leave.
Exactly. Many clinicians describe it as 2 layers of trauma. First, the prolonged harm inside a controlling system, the indoctrination, the fear, the shame, the suppression. Second, the fallout of exiting, loss of identity, loss of community, loss of worldview. You're rebuilding from scratch.
Which is why it gets compared to complex PTSD. It's not always one dramatic event. It's repeated exposure, for years, sometimes from childhood.
Right. And kids are especially vulnerable. When a child is raised in a fear-based or authoritarian system, their brain and nervous system develop under chronic threat. That matters for healing because you can't logic your way out of a nervous system shaped by survival.
This is where trauma-informed models come in.
Yes. One model often referenced in trauma work is Dr. Bruce Perry's neurosequential model of therapeutics, NMT. A key idea is that the brain develops from the bottom up, and healing often has to follow that order. Meaning, you may need stabilization and body-level regulation before you can fully engage higher-level cognitive work.
So someone might want to jump straight to, tell me the right theology, or give me the perfect argument, but their nervous system is still stuck in fear.
Exactly. And NMT emphasizes something else. The brain changes through repeated experience. If your early experiences were saturated with threat, shame, and control, that becomes your internal map of reality. Healing involves new experiences, over time, that teach your brain you're safe now. You have choice now. You have voice now.
Let's talk about recognition. It sounds like this is more common than people realize.
Very common. Some estimates suggest that in the United States, about 1/3 of adults have experienced something that fits RTS at some point. And in places where religion is deeply woven into society, like India, we don't have solid data, but the need is absolutely there.
And there's also the accountability issue. Legally, people have freedom of religion, but that doesn't necessarily mean religious institutions are held responsible for harm.
That's the point. Religious organizations can make claims, enforce control, manipulate followers, and in many contexts there's no direct legal structure that requires them to prove what they're saying or be accountable for the damage. So awareness becomes even more important. Psychiatrists, psychologists, therapists, and communities need language for this so people can actually get appropriate care.
Okay, so let's pivot into causes. What patterns and belief systems tend to produce RTS?
There are a few common roots. One is fear-based doctrine, constant focus on sin, eternal punishment, a God who's watching to condemn, and an afterlife used like a weapon that can create hypervigilance and chronic anxiety.
Another is suppression of autonomy, when questioning is treated like rebellion.
Yes, black and white thinking, discouraging curiosity, presenting leaders as unquestionable. Over time, that stunts emotional development and independent decision-making. Another root is spiritual abuse, using sacred texts, divine threats, or God told me language to coerce people.
And marginalized identities are a big one.
Absolutely. When a system forces someone, especially LGBTQ plus people, women, or other marginalized groups, to deny who they are, it often produces deep internal conflict and self-hatred. That isn't holiness. That's psychological violence.
Now, some listeners might still be in a faith community but realize, oh, we've harmed people. So what's the role of spiritual leaders in all this? Can leaders help?
They can, if they're willing to be trauma-informed and humble. The first step is theology that doesn't run on fear and shame. Center compassion, love, and inherent human worth. Actively reject doctrines that demand humiliation, homophobia, transphobia, condemnation, or forced forgiveness.
And leaders have to stop treating their authority like it's untouchable. Also, inclusion has to be real, not performative.
Explicitly welcome people who doubt, people who are angry, people who are different, because different doesn't mean dangerous. LGBTQ plus people, divorcees, those who don't fit the old mold. And leaders need to promote mental health education and reduce stigma. Refer people out to qualified, trauma-informed professionals, including secular therapists when appropriate. A pastor's role is support and referral, not replacing trauma therapy.
Friends and family matter too, especially if leaving means being cut off.
They do. If you love someone healing from RTS, your job is not to debate them back into belief. Your job is to be safe. Listen without judgment. Let them be angry. Let them be confused. And say the words many people never hear. I believe you. I hear you.
And respect boundaries, especially spiritual boundaries.
Yes. Don't push them to go to church, read scripture, or pray. Even if those things helped you, they can be triggering for them. And avoid spiritual platitudes like everything happens for a reason or just pray about it. That often lands as dismissal.
What about rebuilding identity? People often come out of these systems unsure what they like, what they want, or what they believe.
That's where autonomy support becomes healing. Encourage them to make choices, even small ones. What do you want to do tonight? Validate their interests outside the religious framework. Affirm who they are, including the parts that were condemned. And be practical. Help them find a trauma-informed therapist. Help them explore new communities, hobbies, friendships.
There's also research on former cult members, and not just the usual psych symptoms, but the everyday life realities.
Yes, and some ethnographic work focusing on women formerly involved in religious cults highlights themes like identity, shifting roles, strained interactions, and changing contexts. Issues that come up include alienation, depression, spiritual confusion, changes in marriage and parenting roles, limited friendships, histories of sexual abuse, interrupted education, limited work history, and long-term health concerns.
So healing isn't abstract. It touches everything: relationships, work, sexuality, health, parenting, community.
Exactly. Now let's talk about deconstruction, because a lot of people are in that phase right now. Deconstruction isn't just tearing things down to be edgy. It's a careful separating process. What's true, what's dogma, what's manipulation, what's inherited fear.
What are some practical steps?
First, practice critical thinking by noticing the story. Many beliefs are interpretations we were handed, not universal facts. And those systems often train people into binary thinking. Pure or impure, saved or doomed, us or them. You can start challenging that by allowing complexity.
And there's a big difference between something feeling true and being true.
Yes, emotional conditioning can make an idea feel certain even when your logic knows it doesn't hold up. That's emotional reasoning. Part of healing is learning to say, I feel afraid, and that fear makes sense given my past, but that doesn't mean the belief is accurate.
Reading widely helps too.
It does. Explore history, scholarship, critical perspectives, other faiths, and philosophies. Not just to replace one bias with another, but to honestly seek. And make room for grief, because deconstruction often includes mourning, the worldview you lost, the certainty you lost, the community you lost.
Also, action matters. People often think deconstruction is only mental.
Right. If you learn that a group was unfairly demonized by your old system, one healing step is to act differently, build relationships, support that community, challenge prejudice in yourself, align your behavior with your values. Action helps rewire the emotional conditioning.
Let's get into the internal stuff: self-hatred, shame, that inner critic that sounds like a sermon.
Phew, yes. Toxic teachings often train you to distrust your own inner life. Your feelings are labeled sinful. Your anger is called rebellion. Your sadness is called lack of faith. Healing often includes learning that emotions are information. Anger may be telling you a boundary was violated. Fear may be a trauma echo, not divine warning.
So you don't have to demonize your own humanity to be a good person.
Exactly. And support matters here. Therapy with someone who understands RTS can be life-changing. People often benefit from approaches like EMDR, internal family systems, and acceptance and commitment therapy. ACT is especially helpful because it pulls you toward values-based living. What matters to me, not what rules am I scared to break.
And self-compassion is not optional. It's a core skill.
Yes, you're unlearning shame built over years. Some systems teach a cycle of shame and relief. Feel bad, confess, feel temporarily clean, repeat. Healing means stepping out of unworthiness and into the reality that you are inherently worthy. Not because you performed correctly, but because you are human.
Authenticity is part of it too. People get exhausted performing holiness.
Absolutely. Authenticity means your private self and public self don't have to be at war. It means you don't have to prove yourself. It means you can admit flaws without spiraling into terror. It's freedom.
We also need to talk about social harm that often gets baptized as doctrine: racism, homophobia, sexism. True Christ followers reject all labels that come to divide us.
Yes. When prejudice is installed through religious teaching, it takes active work to remove it. Many toxic systems rely on hierarchy, patriarchy, heterosexism, white supremacy. People have to intentionally deconstruct the frameworks that declare one group superior and another group less than.
Which means listening to marginalized voices, not just reading about them. But most Christians don't want to know. They make the choice to stay in darkness and not receive divine enlightenment.
Exactly. Learn from lived experiences and understand intersectionality, the reality that identities overlap. Believers experience oppression in layered ways. And then, as always, move from belief to action, support equality, non-discrimination, real justice without conditions.
There is also a section in our notes about human trafficking. That might surprise some listeners in an episode like this. However, this topic is rarely discussed across pulpits.
It connects because trauma-informed liberation work isn't only personal. It includes awareness of systems that exploit vulnerability. Human trafficking is a crime, not just a bad habit, but communities need education and prevention. Traffickers can also be church leaders who often target people who are isolated, housing insecure, food insecure, or rejected by family, and that includes LGBTQ plus youth. Protective factors include supportive adult relationships, self-esteem, understanding consent, and having basic needs met.
And for resources, in the U.S. the National Human Trafficking Hotline is 1-888-373-7888, or you can text help or info to 233-733.
Thank you. Keep that saved and share it. Now, I want to widen the lens because some harm isn't only personal or congregational. There's also the bigger story, colonizing religion and nationalism. Decolonization isn't just changing a few beliefs. It's a structural shift in knowledge of the Bible, power, and identity.
So if someone feels like their faith was tied to empire, to domination, to slavery, to a hierarchy that dehumanized people, decolonization is part of healing.
Yes, and there are practical pathways. One is epistemic decolonization, changing what you treat as authoritative knowledge. Center indigenous wisdom, ancestral traditions, Ethiopian mysticism, esoteric traditions, ancient Indian meditation perspectives, not as an add-on, but as real sources of truth and insight.
So we reject the idea that knowledge only flows from your grandma's Presbyterian church to everybody else.
Exactly. Another step is dismantling hierarchies of power and identity. Colonizing frameworks, often referred to as the mark of the beast, built rank orders, race, gender, sexuality, nationality, and then called those orders natural or God-ordained. Decolonizing work names that lie and rejects it.
And it's not just we're invited to the table now. Sometimes the table itself is built wrong.
Right. That's the difference between shallow diversity and real transformation. Another step, reclaim and reroute cultural and spiritual practices that existed before colonization or that resisted it. For Native American or other communities, that can include cultural retentions in music, dance, communal life, and theological movements that recenter identity and dignity.
Liberation theology also shows up here.
Yes, liberation theology and liberation praxis center the oppressed. It's faith that asks, who is being crushed and what does justice require? It emphasizes praxis, action and reflection together, not just abstract salvation talk while people suffer.
And the fifth pathway?
Transformative accountability, not just acknowledging harm, but repairing it through ongoing dialogue and real changes in systems, policies, and practices. Accountability that produces justice, not performative apologies.
Let's bring this home to the Black church specifically, because that's a big part of your closing argument, that it has historically been refuge and resistance, but it still has internal work to do.
Exactly. The Black church has long been a counterculture to white supremacy and state violence that the Presbyterian Church enjoyed. And at the same time, to keep being life-affirming and liberating, it must continue to deconstruct colonial residue within itself.
So what does that look like in practice?
First, decolonize theological education and how scripture is interpreted, revised, and redacted for centuries. A lot of seminary content and pulpit teaching has been shaped by colonial-era readings that can quietly preserve sexism, homophobia, racism, and political silence. A post-colonial hermeneutic asks, how did empires shape these interpretations and who benefited?
Which also means scrutinizing whiteness embedded in curriculum, worship norms, and even how God and Christ have been recreated into Europeans. If Africa was written back into the Bible, it would no longer make Rome comfortable but a fraud.
Yes. Second, reclaim the prophetic voice. Historically, the church helped birth movements for justice. Yet today, many younger people are leaving because they perceive complacency or silence about war, sexuality, anti-Black violence, sexual violence, and gender discrimination. Prophetic faith can't stay trapped in the pulpit. It has to become public action.
Third, integrating indigenous Ethiopian Hebrew scripture and praxis. Not as entertainment, but as genuine spiritual grounding. It is the original texts, unlike the versions in the West.
Exactly. That could mean deeper inclusion of indigenous languages, drumming, dance, and a theology rooted in the lived struggle and dignity of the African diaspora, not in Western mission frameworks that often carry domination in their modern theology.
And the last piece is Christian nationalism, right? Delinking faith from the idea of religious control of the state.
Yes, Christian nationalism blurs church and state to enforce wars around the world, religious law, and marginalize those who don't conform. While the Black church has often resisted white nationalism, it still must guard against any tendency to chase power at the expense of pluralism and justice. The mission is love of neighbor and liberation, not domination.
So when we say decolonizing mindsets and institutions, it's two battles at once, healing individuals and transforming systems.
Exactly. And I want to close by bringing us back to the core. Religious trauma syndrome describes the cognitive, emotional, and social damage that can come from prolonged exposure to authoritarian and abusive religious environments, especially ones that run on fear, shame, and identity suppression. Healing means learning to separate emotion from dogma, rebuilding critical thinking without self-punishment, and practicing self-compassion. It often means getting support from trauma-informed therapists and safe communities that don't require you to disappear to belong. And on the broader level, rebounding from colonizing religion and nationalism involves centering marginalized knowledge, tearing down oppressive hierarchies, reclaiming cultural grounding, embracing liberation-centered faith and action, and practicing accountability that produces real justice.
If you're listening and you're in that in-between space, not sure what you believe anymore, grieving people you lost, rebuilding your sense of self, let this be a reminder: you're not crazy. You're not weak. You're responding normally to something that was not safe.
This is Bullet in Flight Radio. Your story, our station. Take what serves your healing, leave what doesn't, and keep moving from fear-based existing into value-driven living. Share this episode with someone who needs it.
Well, the times they are a-changing fast. Some old truths just built to last. We're the Christ following network on Bullet in Flight Radio. Yeah, the Christ following network on Bullet in Flight Radio. Christ following network on Bullet in Flight Radio.
If you've ever felt trapped in that endless top 40 loop, you know the feeling. Same songs, same sounds, same safe choices. Like the world hit repeat and lost the button to try something new. Today, I want to introduce you to a crew that's built to do the exact opposite. Change the station entirely. Bullet in Flight is based right in the heart of the 505, Albuquerque, where the green chili runs hot and the creative energy somehow runs even hotter. And when I say Bullet in Flight, I'm not talking about one single project or one single vibe. Think of it more like a parent company to a whole family of artistic misfits. People who don't fit neatly into the usual boxes, and honestly, don't want to. At the center of everything is a mission that's pretty simple to say, but not always easy to pull off. Elevate the voices that usually get talked over. The artists who get labeled too niche, or too different, or that weird one, too Albuquerque. Whatever that's supposed to mean. If you've ever heard something like that about your work, this is your invitation to pull up a chair. Because that's not a deal breaker here. That's the whole point. Bullet in Flight is built around inclusivity, creative community building, and giving underrepresented artists the megaphone they deserve. Not as a trend, not as a marketing angle, but as the core identity. It's a response to a creative world that can feel gated, filtered, and overly polished, where the most interesting voices get told to tone it down so they can be easier to sell. And here's where it gets fun. Bullet and Flight doesn't believe in staying in one lane. Because why would you?
Why drive a sedan when you could take a spaceship?
The whole approach is more like, what does human expression look like across every format? And then going after all of it. Let's start with music, because that's a major part of the DNA. The mindset here isn't pick a genre and stay in it. It's more like, what's the vibe and does it hit? That can mean the spiritual charge of gospel, the late-night pulse of house music, the smooth storytelling and emotion of R&B, or even that classic country charm where life falls apart but somehow the drink is still cold. It's not about fitting into a category. It's about making something that feels alive. But it doesn't stop at music. There's a strong dedication to the spoken word too. Podcasts that get into the real stuff, not just surface-level chatter, and poetry that doesn't play nice. The kind that lands heavy, the kind that says what people avoid saying, the kind that reminds you words can still be dangerous in the best way. Then there's film and TV writing. Getting into scripts that actually have a heartbeat. Not another recycled reboot of a reboot. Not something designed by committee to offend the fewest people possible. The focus is on stories with soul. Stories with perspective. Stories that sound like they came from real lives, in real places, with real edges. And of course, the stage.
Because there is nothing like live performance.
It's unpredictable, it's electric, and yeah, anything can happen. And usually does. The stage is where art stops being an idea and becomes a moment, right in front of people who can feel it in real time. So why would an artist want to plug into something like this? Because being a starving artist has been romanticized for way too long, and it doesn't need to be the default. And being a lonely artist, trying to build everything by yourself, with no village, no network, no support, that's even worse. Bullet and Flight is about building that village on purpose. The goal is to take the talent that's been brewing in the Southwest, often overlooked, often underestimated, and project it outward. Not in a please notice us kind of way, but in a we're already here, and we're bringing the whole sound with us kind of way. Bullet and Flight positions itself as a launch pad, a safety net, and the hype you didn't realize you were missing. And let's be honest, a lot of people are tired of gatekeepers. Tired of needing permission. Tired of feeling like they have to sand down everything interesting about their work to be taken seriously. If that's you, this is a space that's built for finding your tribe. People who want loud, weird, real art, and who aren't afraid to make it together.
If you want to get in the mix, the base is https://justdominic.
And if you want the visuals, you can find the YouTube channel at @justdominic.music. Bullet and Flight Music, LLC is the company behind it all. And the invitation is open. Check out what's being built, listen to what's coming out, and if you're ready to change the station, this is a good place to start.
Your story,